Hi guys. So yesterday I said that I was going to start branching out into some other topics and sharing more of my own personal experiences and my own journey. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my bipolar disorder and what that can be like for me to live with on a day-to-day basis, and also some of the things that I do to help mitigate the symptoms that I deal with. So the reason why I want to talk about that now is because it is something that I've currently been struggling with again for the last few weeks. Now, normally I don't talk about things that I experience during an episode until after the episode is passed for a few different reasons. First and foremost, I don't have a whole lot of motivation. I don't really care about much. It's hard for me to be enthusiastic. It's hard for me to get myself out of bed in the morning. I generally don't have the energy to really talk about it. I also have a much harder time stringing words together, and I get very frustrated at my own inability to express what it is that I'm going through. And I feel really scatterbrained, and so it does make me feel very vulnerable to talk about it while I'm going through it. But as I was saying yesterday, I really do want to embrace the concept of different functional. And this is part of my humanness. It's not all that I am, obviously, and there are a lot of people that make the argument, well, if you don't define yourself by it, then you're not that. Okay, I get where people are coming from with that, but the fact of the matter is that I do actually have neurochemical imbalances. That's part of my physiology, and yes, there are ways to work with it, but it doesn't ever go away. It can be managed, but it doesn't ever go away. So yes, it is not something that I define myself by, but it is a part of my humanness, and it is something that I've learned to accept. It's even something that I've learned to appreciate about myself and about my experiences in life. And so I'm going to share that with you guys, even though it does make me feel vulnerable, because that is, the philosophy of different functional, is to fully embrace who you are, strengths and weaknesses, and working with that and being open about it, and just full self-acceptance. And I hope that the things that I share in this video and in other videos to come about my bipolar, I hope that you guys will be able to be more accepting of yourselves and be more open about who you are and about some of the things that you deal with as well. I hope that if you have similar struggles, that you gain some tools and resources, and if nothing else, you just feel like you're not so alone. But this is me walking the talk. So even though I do feel very vulnerable, it's important to me that I share these things. Now, before I get into too many details, a lot of people know what bipolar disorder is, and by now we've heard quite a bit about it over the last several years, so it is something that a lot of people are familiar with. But if you don't really know what it is, in its most basic terms, it is severe mood swings. And by severe, I mean that they can be incapacitating and have very significant impact on your life. And they can last for weeks or months. It can go on for quite a while. So there are two primary types of bipolar disorder. Type 1 is characterized by episodes of mania, which in the most basic of terms is prolonged periods of very high energy. So a lot of people who are having a really bad manic flare-up, that's not the right word, but I'm struggling to find the right one. But people who deal with really severe mania, they may go several days without sleeping. They may be, immensely creative and be able to accomplish a lot over a very short period of time. And that part can be kind of cool, right? That so far doesn't sound too bad. But on the flip side of that, you can get excessive feelings of superiority or feeling invincible. It's associated with reckless and dangerous behavior, things that put your life at risk, things that put your bank account at serious risk, that sort of thing. And it can cause very high anxiety, and when it gets really bad, you get to the point where you can't even focus or think about anything. So it's very debilitating, and personally I think that type 1 is probably the more terrifying of the two. Now, it's not something that I know as much about from personal experience because I am bipolar disorder type 2. which is characterized by prolonged periods of incapacitating depression. Now, people with bipolar disorder type 2 do have episodes of what's referred to as hypomania, which is like mania, but it's not nearly as severe. So I do get a little bit of a taste of what that's like, which is why I say that to me type 1 has got to be terrifying to have, because even just my episodes of hypomania are very intense and they're scary. So we don't know still exactly what causes bipolar or how it exactly works or even what neurochemicals are completely associated with it. We have some of the answers, but we don't have all of the puzzle pieces. So they know that there's a genetic component, but like with a lot of genetic things, it's whether or not that gene gets activated. So for me, it obviously got activated when I was a teenager. And I've been dealing with it since I was 16. Before that I had depression, but it wasn't as severe. And in a future video I'll talk a little bit more about kind of the journey that I went through in discovering that I had bipolar and all of that, but I'm not going to get into that today. So they do know that there is a genetic factor, and lucky you if you have that gene that gets activated. They also know that that is definitely a neurochemical component. So basically, when you have bipolar disorder, your neurochemical balance is very precarious and it's volatile, and sometimes you know what triggers an episode, and sometimes you have no idea. Now, I've gotten to a point over the years where I'm very in tune with my body, and I know exactly what the red flags are, what the warning signs are. I know when something's coming, and a lot of times I can head it off at the pass, but sometimes I can't. And it's been frustrating for me the last few weeks, and acknowledging that, okay, I'm having another episode. It's not nearly as severe as other ones that I've had in the past. Some of the ones that I've had in the past have completely incapacitated me for months at a time. I've had 3 really bad depressive episodes, and when I had those, the longest one that I had lasted almost a year, and I couldn't work. I was terrified of everything. I couldn't drive. I didn't really spend any time around people. I was suicidal the entire time. I cried nearly every day. I put on 30-40 pounds, and there were a lot of days when I curled up on a closet floor just because I was so terrified of life. And it was, there were also a lot of times, and I still get this is one of the most frequent things that I experience, are periods of time where I'm basically catatonic, where I am so depressed that I just go blank, and I don't, people a lot of times don't necessarily understand the difference between being depressed and being sad. When you're really depressed, it can get to the point where you really don't feel anything. It's just kind of blank, and everything feels pointless, and you don't even see the point in trying anymore, because, well, if I get up in the morning, well, hell, I'm just gonna have to do the same things that I do every day, only to have to do them all over again, and it's just exhausting. And the idea of even trying to function not only seems pointless, but it just wears you out. So I do still have more frequently periods of time where I'm just catatonic, where I'll sit for hours and just stare off into space. I'm not watching TV, I'm not reading a book, I'm not doing anything like that because I can't focus. And I just don't see the point. It's very hard to motivate myself to do anything when I'm at my worst. Now, like I was saying, this particular episode has not been nearly as bad, and I think a lot of that is because I have really worked hard to get to a point where I recognize my triggers and to know when things are coming and to have some idea of how to mitigate that. Now, I don't know exactly what prompted this particular episode. I know that I haven't really been the same since I got sick with pneumonia at the end of January. So at first I thought that maybe that was it, and, you know, because I wasn't eating a whole lot, and, you know, blood sugar can be involved with triggering bipolar symptoms and all of that. So I thought at first that it was just that, but it's been a couple of months now and I'm still having problems. The last couple of days haven't been as bad, but last week I had a few days where, well, really not just last week, it's been about 2 or 3 weeks where I've had really severe, like, suicidal ideation again, which is something that I've not had in quite a while. I went a year without having any symptoms at all because I'd gotten so good at managing it with my supplements and my diet and my lifestyle and all of that. So for it to come back it's really frustrating. And in some ways I think I feel it even stronger because I've been so long without it. It used to be that being miserable every day was just how I lived, and I had just come to terms with the fact that that's how it was going to be. Especially because I refuse to take psych meds. I don't judge people who do, but I refuse to do it myself because of watching my mom and the cocktail of psych meds that they had her on and how it affected her, and it's just not something that I mess with. So I had gotten to a point where I had come to terms with the fact that I was probably, you know, always just going to be miserable, and then I started discovering, oh no, there's things that I can do. So, like, I eliminated sugar and gluten and dairy and soy, and all of those things helped. And I started supplementing with amino acids, and amino acids are building blocks of proteins that also operate as neurochemicals, or at least as precursors to neurochemicals, and doing that helped a lot too. And I started being more regular in my routines and making sure that things around me were organized, and that I had schedules that I could live by, because routine also helps to keep me on track. So all of those things really helped. And I went a year without having any symptoms at all, and then this hit, and it's been hard because I don't know exactly what caused this episode. I don't know if the pneumonia caused, you know, something to get out of balance that I just haven't been able to get back in. And it doesn't feel like my normal bipolar stuff. I'm actually going to be going into a doctor here in a couple of weeks for a couple of reasons. So I did find recently a lump in my breast, which is, you know, a thing all its own. So that's contributed to stress, which is probably part of what's been contributing to this episode. And I've had a lot of stressful things in my environment going on that I'm not going to talk about right now, but so that's one of the reasons I'm going into the doctor. But the other part of it is I've been having a whole lot of hormonal symptoms, a lot of low back pain and imbalances with my menstrual cycle, and breakouts and breast tenderness and all sorts of things that just are not normal. And on their own, each thing other than the lump in my breast, not a huge deal, but when you stack them all up together, there's definitely something in my endocrine system or my hormones that's really out of whack. So I think that's why it's been more challenging for me to figure out what to do, because before all of my symptoms I was able to manage with the lifestyle changes that I made, and because I got used to knowing what it felt like when it was coming from my head. And I don't know if those of you who don't experience bipolar will be able to know the difference by feel. But for me, I've gotten so in tune with my body that I can tell when my bipolar symptoms are really and completely just like, you know, most basic neurochemical, serotonin, dopamine, that sort of thing. Because I experience it more in my head. Everything feels like it's in my mind, which can make you feel a little bit like you're going crazy. But this time around, it's like I feel it in my body. And that to me tells me that, along with all the other symptoms that I'm having, that this is a hormonal imbalance that is affecting my neurochemistry. And that's what's causing a lot of the bipolar symptoms that I'm experiencing. So I do have some concept of what's going on, not necessarily what caused it and why everything's gotten so out of whack, but I do have some concept of, okay, my hormones are out of balance and that's affecting my neurochemistry. And so now I need to get things balanced again. Now the struggle for me is figuring out, okay, how do I do that? Because it is something that's always, it's always shifting. You're always going to have new challenges that you have to work with this disorder. And there have been, you know, a few times already over the last couple of years as I've been working with it that I've had to change my dosages of my supplements and change my diet around again. So I'm going through that trial and error process yet again. And the reason, you know, why I'm going into the doctor is, you know, I've done all of this myself up to this point, just sheer trial and error. And this time I can't figure it out on my own. And to be perfectly honest, I'm tired of doing things by trial and error. So I'm going into a naturopath. I'm going to have them do blood tests, and we'll just see what they can find as far as maybe deficiencies that I have that are causing the issues with my hormones or with my neurochemical imbalance. So this time I'm actually going to get help, which I normally refuse to do. I'm usually very stubborn and I can do everything on my own, and up to this point in my life I have, and I'm proud of that I've been able to do that. But I've reached a point now where I'm like, okay, you know what, I've fought the good fight and I've struggled with this by myself for a really long time, and it's okay for me to seek some assistance. It's okay for me to get some answers without having to struggle so hard for it, without having to go through all the trial and error, or at least not to the same degree, because I've been basically flying blind and figuring it out as I go along, which again, I'm proud that I've been able to do that, but there's no shame in asking for help, and this is the first time in my life where I'm really acknowledging that. So that's kind of like the gist of what I've been kind of dealing with internally for the last few weeks. I think that the worst part of it for me this time around has been just like the sheer exhaustion. For the last few weeks, there's been a lot of days, you know, sometimes every other day, where I'll come home from work and I'll sleep for 2 or 3 hours because I'm just that wiped out. I'll wake up for a few hours and then I'll go to bed 10:30 at night and, you know, do the same routine the next day. Get up in the morning, go to my job, come home, sleep for 3 hours, wake up long enough to basically take a shower and eat and, you know, do, you know, watch an anime or something and then pass back out because that's all I've had the energy for. And part of that's the bipolar, the depressiveness, but part of that's also related to the hormonal imbalances. There's something I'm certain going on either with my adrenals or with my thyroid, but something is off there. So that's been really challenging for me, but I think what's been the scariest for me this time around is the suicidal ideation, because normally in the past when I've had that, it's been easier for me to deal with. And I don't know, maybe this will sound strange, because when I've had that in the past, it's usually been when I've been hypomanic or when I've been in a mixed state, and a mixed state is when you are experiencing the depression and the mania at the same time. So everything feels pointless and you have no motivation and you're super exhausted, but you're super anxious and wired and you can't focus, you can't sleep, you can't do anything. So it's miserable being in a mixed state. But in the past, usually when I have those suicidal thoughts, I'm in a mixed state and I can pull myself back just enough to recognize, okay, I am crazy right now. And I'm going to use that term crazy because that's how I feel when I'm going through it. So if you have a stigma with that word, I'm sorry, but to me, that's what it feels like when I'm in a mixed state, is I feel crazy. And so when I have the suicidal ideation in a mixed state, I'm able to pull myself back just enough to be like, you know what, I am crazy right now, and this is not a time to make decisions about whether I'm going to live or die. And that's been my saving grace a lot of times. But this time around, it's been, and I think it's different too because there's a hormonal imbalance that's really significantly impacting things. And this time around with the suicidal ideation, it's gotten so bad at times where I have very calmly planned out, you know, how I different ways that I might be able to end my life and make it look like an accident. I've actually contacted people in my life and told them, hey, I am feeling suicidal. And this is something that I've done in the past as well. I let people that are close to me know that I'm feeling suicidal, because it's an effective guilt trip for me. Because that way I know that if I tell the people that I'm closest to that I want to kill myself, and then I go through with it, then they're going to feel guilty for the rest of their lives that they knew and they couldn't have stopped me. And I don't know if you agree with that way of doing things, but to me that is my mechanism, and the people that are really close to me in my life, they know that happens from time to time, and they accept that, and it gives them an opportunity to be present there for me and to let me know that they're there, which helps as well. Because that can pull me back to reality too, because there are times when I feel suicidal and when I'm really depressed, where I'm like, it doesn't matter if I live or die, because there's nobody that's really going to be significantly impacted by that. It doesn't matter. And there's nothing that I can contribute to this world that somebody else can't contribute but better. So there are times when I feel that way. And so having the reminders from the people close to me that they do care about me, that does help pull me back to reality, and it keeps me present and it keeps me here. So that's one of the ways that I deal with the suicidal ideation, is I let the people close to me know, because it's more dangerous for me to keep that to myself. And it's easier for me to keep it to myself, because who wants to tell people that? Especially if you're really thinking about it seriously. If you really think you want to end it all, you don't want to tell people about that. You just want to let it happen. So yeah, that's one of the things that I do to keep myself from going too far, is I let the people close to me know, so that they can be there for me and so that I can keep myself in check, because I never want the people close to me to feel in any way, shape, or form responsible for me taking my own life. But the fact that I've been so calm about it, and that I've been so calculated in my thinking, there have been a couple of days, honest to God, there have been a couple of days lately where the only thing that's kept me from killing myself is remembering that if I die by suicide, the life insurance won't pay out to my sister. And then not only would she lose me, but she also would still be broke. And that is legit, for a couple of days over the past few weeks, been the only thing that has kept me going. And, you know, people always say, like, well, you should live for yourself. And that's great. Ideally, yes, that's what you want to aim for. Overall, big picture, that's what you want to aim for overall, is to live for yourself. But when you're really feeling suicidal, the important thing is to find a reason to live. And it doesn't matter whether that reason is you, if it is a family member, if it's a pet, if it's your job. It does not matter. Whatever your reason is to keep yourself going, that's what you do when you're really feeling suicidal. The big picture view in your life, absolutely, you want to strive to live for yourself and make your life better and find happiness and fulfillment, and that is fantastic. But when you are at crisis level, it's finding anything and everything that you can to keep yourself going. So that's been the most challenging part about this particular episode for me. The only other thing that's really been hard is I do have rapid cycling bipolar, which basically means I can fluctuate back and forth between depression and the hypomania. And for me, there are times when I fluctuate back and forth several times within a single day. And today was one of those days, which is one of the reasons I decided to address this in the video today. For the first part of today, I actually felt really calm. I was feeling all right, a little bit depressed still, very mildly, a little bit numbed out, just kind of going through the motions. And then I crashed out, and I was really depressed and suicidal again, and thinking everybody would be better off without me and all of that. Then I calmed down again, and I was feeling even motivated and productive to get some things done. And then I got a phone call after I got off work from my supervisor, and telling me that my massage license was apparently expired. And I did not know that. I could have sworn that I renewed my license. I have never let something like that lapse before, and it caused a lot of anxiety for me because I only had like an hour before the state offices closed for the weekend, and I needed to contact them and get my license back up and running. And so like I got really, really stressed out, and the anxiety that prompted, and I did get it worked out, but afterward I was in basically a mild form of a mixed state. So I was super shaky, I was very restless, I was really agitated, I couldn't focus, I couldn't think straight, I was wanting to self-harm, that sort of thing. And so I needed to do something. And for me, one of the best coping mechanisms that I use is that I go for a drive, which is why I'm sitting in my car. As that helps me to calm myself. It helps me to bring myself back to center. So that's what I did to help myself cope and to bring myself back to reality. Is I went for a drive, and I even went to a bookstore and I looked around at books, and in time the anxiety and the scatteredness started to calm down, and I got to a point where I could at least record this video. And I'm starting to get close to timeout for this video on my phone. This is the first time I've tried to use my phone to record, so I'm going to wrap this up for this time. But that's just kind of a snapshot of what it can be like for me as I'm going through an episode. And in the future I will do some videos where there's an even more honest look on days that I'm really not doing well, where I'm super exhausted. And it's not that I want to make people depressed or anything like that. It's to give an accurate view of what it can be like and what goes into mitigating some of our weaknesses and what goes into true self-acceptance, because there are times when I have to acknowledge that this is just where I'm at, and it's okay for me to be here. It's not okay to stay stuck here, but it's okay for me to be here. And that's one of the things that I'm going to talk about in probably the next video is, you know, we have a lot of concepts within the spiritual community and really within society as well, that we have to be okay all the time, that we have to be love and light all the time, almost that we need to not be human at all. And I very much believe that it's okay for us to be human. We are human and we are divine, and it's okay, and it's healthy for us to accept both of those things. And part of accepting our humanness is to sometimes just let ourselves be who we are and be in the emotional state that we're in. And it's not about staying stuck there. It's about acknowledging that what you're going through is your experience, and that it's all right for you to feel what you feel and to experience what you experience. And there's nothing shameful about it. There's nothing wrong with it inherently. It's what you do with it and how you recover from it. And it's how you choose to live your life and how you choose to accept yourself. So that's going to be the content of the next video, more than likely. But I just wanted to hop on here and share this really quick with you guys. So you would have kind of an idea of what the bipolar disorder is like for me. Like I said, there will be other videos in the future. But yeah. So you guys have a good one, and I will talk to you next time.